we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
Finally. I was curious how that was going to go. I'm broadcasting from the road, literally on a road microphone. My first time using this setup, and it actually worked. So I wasn't going to be arrogant and say I've got new stuff and it's going to work, because the last few times we've gone live, there's been something. So it's okay. we had a positive attitude. We're traveling. Beans and I are in sunny California. We did the Tinfoil Hat podcast yesterday. Had such an amazing time with Sam Tripoli and Johnny Woodard and XG. Fun conversation. I don't know when the episode's coming out, but I imagine in the next few days or so. Always good to see those guys. And anyway, I've got some stories for you today. I looked at the Drudge Report. I pulled that up, and all I could think was, it's something that Sam and I talked about yesterday. You know, it's humbling to be in this business where you're trying to give analysis without being biased, and truly giving your best opinion, seeing what's next. Because what's the point? Your point is you listen to me because you want to find out what's actually going on. What do I think? Track record of being it's somewhat right, or like my dad said, how's it feel? How's it feel to lose all that money being a contrarian? It's basically what he asked me last week. He said, "You're such a contrarian, son. You just you miss out on a lot of the popular movements and stuff," and that's true. And to the best of my ability, I go into my subconscious. I try to remove anything that would be, preconceived notions, and just try to lay out what's happening. And I tell you what, I didn't see any of this coming. Look at the headlines of Drudge. That happened swiftly, didn't it? And what's funny is the things that I've mentioned before, like the Steve Bannon Epstein interview. I saw that was like 2 years ago that I knew about it. And I kept going, hey, does anybody else realize that Steve Bannon did a sit-down interview with Jeffrey Epstein like in 2019 or 2018? And I said, does anybody realize that? And it just went away. And now it's the front page of Drudge. And so this is how stuff like this works. I mean, it can be like, I'll catalog it, put it in the back of my mind. And now we've seen this complete pole reversal of where, it was, we look at MAGA, you look at these movements where we're going to get the Democrats on the run. They're all on Epstein Island. They're all on the Lolita Express, and we're going to expose all these people. And now that's the Republicans versus the Democrats. And now the whole thing is a pole reversal where the Democrats are subpoenaing the Clintons. That's the world in which we live in, folks. And so I pulled up an article. I thought, see, this is where my mind goes. I want to see who else thinks like me. So I went to LouRockwell.com, there's an article up there I definitely want to read, because it talks about, like, what do you do now if you're at the top of the political hierarchy? What usually happens next when you have something like this going on, which is this, by the way, it's catastrophic. So let's just not mince words. It reminds me of a scene in my favorite movie. I talked about this yesterday on Tinfoil Hat, or at least my favorite movie, which is Oliver Stone's Nixon. And there's this great scene where Bob Haldeman, played by James Woods, and Bob Haldeman was Nixon's right-hand man, his go-to guy. And this is the 1960 campaign. It's the first time that, like, debates are televised. And that's when you see, like, Kennedy's looking rested and Nixon's tired because he's been out campaigning hard and all this stuff. And they have this exchange where Nixon's part of the security cabinet. He knows what they're trying to do to Castro, and Kennedy calls him out on it. And he knows that Nixon can't really respond, because if he does, it violates national security. Had he responded toughly about taking out Castro, he would have won most likely, because it made him look kind of soft. And as soon as he didn't respond that way, Bob Haldeman looked at everybody else and goes, "It's over. More coffee." Like, he just knew that the whole thing was over. He just wanted more coffee. So that's kind of how I feel. More coffee. All right, we're going to jump into some. I want to get into some economics. There's an article up on Activist Post I want to talk about, because I'm just going to try to put as much into this episode as possible. I've been researching in using AI, and I'm not the first to jump on technology. I'm certainly not the last, but there's a lot of biases and things that people talk about AI and what's going on with AI, what's it going to replace, and it's a doomsday everything. That's at least what we've been primed for. Like, my whole life since I was a kid, it's basically John Connor is warning us, not to make friends with the AI, from Terminator, and it's the Matrix, and it's everything else. At least that's what we're primed for, which is weird, because it manifested itself anyway. But I've been experimenting with AI a bit, asking it questions and looking at deep dives on the financial part of things, and where we go with stable coins, where we go with Bitcoin, where we go with gold. And I've had some interesting interactions. I like it so far. I like the intricacy of it. And I got an article I want to talk about, because apparently it's making people dumber. And it's so funny. It's like, why? That's an open question as to why that is, especially given the amazing things that it can do. But I guess the same thing with the internet. People are dumber. It's idiocracy, and it really is confounding, isn't it? That we have all this information, we have all this technology, we have all this other stuff, and people are getting dumber. But I definitely want to jump into that, and I'll go to the chat as well, and I'll make sure I'm on my laptop today. Beans is producing, so I'll definitely get to that. All right, let's jump into our first article of the day. This is something I want to let's get into the economics of things first. I saw this was up by Michael Schneider, and I know anybody out there right now, it is getting weird. The economy is getting weird. The energy out there is weird. Just dealing with other people right now. Is anybody else having the same thing? Just dealing with other people is bizarre. There's an energy out there that definitely is different. I want to put this up on the screen, though. This is a great article, just breaking this. Michael Schneider does this with the Economic Collapse blog, and I want to put this up because it really does do a decent synopsis on the facts. This is 10 economic facts that nobody can deny. If you ask 1,000 different Americans about the state of the U.S. economy, you will get 1,000 different opinions. But what is the truth? I love that. That's such a great question. That's what Pontius Pilate asked, at the before he turned Jesus over to the mob. What is truth? In this article, I'm going to share information with you that is indisputable. I like to examine things from an analytical point of view. And so I always want to know what the cold, hard numbers are telling me. And the cold, hard numbers are telling me this is very troubling. It says there are 10 economic facts no one can deny. Number one, The Conference Board's index of leading economic indicators fell more than expected last month. And during the entire first half of 2025, it declined at an even faster rate than it did during the second half of 24. The Conference Board Leading Economic Index, LEI, for the U.S. declined by 0.3% in June 2025 to 98.8% after no change in May, revised upward 0.1% originally reported. As a result, the LEI fell by 2.8% over the first half of 2025, a substantially faster rate of decline than the 1.3% contraction over the second half of 2024. The U.S. LEI fell further in June, said Houston Zabinska-Lamonica, senior manager business cycle indicators. For the second month in a row, the stock price rally was the main support of the LEI, but this was not enough to offset the still very low consumer expectations, weak new orders in manufacturing, and a third consecutive month of rising initial claims for unemployment insurance. Number two, we just learned the sales of previously owned homes have fallen to their lowest level in 9 months. Sales of previously owned homes in the United States hit their lowest rate in 9 months, according to industry data released Wednesday, as home prices and mortgage rates weighed on the market. Existing home sales dropped 2.7% last month to a seasonally adjusted rate of 3.9 million, said the National Association of Realtors. I mean, that's the core of our economy. Is what's built on is not necessarily homes, but it's the prices, those prices of homes built in and the lending that goes around them. Sorry, guys, we're getting a phone call here in the office. Number three, it is being reported that millions of Americans that are on existing health insurance plans will hit double-digit rate hikes next year. There's nothing I can do about the phone, guys. Consumers who buy health insurance through Affordable Care Act Marketplace will likely face double-digit rate hikes next year. Insurers plan on median price increases of 15% for 2026 plans. That's crazy too, because I've got Blue Cross for my company, and I get automatic drafts on this thing. And every month I look at it, it's like it just keeps increasing. And this is like catastrophic coverage for, family and core employees. And I mean, I could rent a new space. I could have another Wise Wolf for what I'm paying for that. And again, this is just catastrophic coverage, like just making sure bare minimums in case something bad happens. It's not even like the gold plan or whatever you want to call it. It's a good plan, but it is extremely expensive. Many working age consumers who get their health insurance through the workplace won't be spared either. Benefits consultant Mercer said more than half of big employers expect to shift a larger share of insurance costs to employees and their family next year by raising deductibles, copays, and out-of-pocket requirements. And that's just all part of inflation too. Like the cost of everything goes up. The price of beef in the United States has risen 9% since January. This is number 4. First it was eggs, and now it's beef. The last time Americans likely noticed spiking prices at the grocery store was when eggs reached record highs. Since then, egg prices have fallen after the deadly avian flu outbreak was contained and producers built back supply. Manufactured thing. Now beef prices are hitting record highs, almost 9% since January, according to the Department of Agriculture, and retailing around $9.26 a pound. June's consumer price index showed steak and ground beef prices are up 12.4% and 10.3% respectively over the last year. Well, transportation costs, feed costs, and again, just the loss of purchasing power in the dollar, and you're not making more. You're on a treadmill because of wages don't match inflation. That's the hidden tax, and everything costs more. Number 5, more Americans than ever are using buy now, pay later loans to pay for groceries. And we've covered this here on the show. 25% of buy now, pay later users say they've used the loans to buy groceries. That's up from 14% just a year ago, and rising prices at the supermarket. 1/3 of Gen Z buy now, pay later users say they've done so, making it the fourth most common buy now, pay later purchase of the age group, trailing clothing, technology, and home decor. So people are literally putting food on credit cards and buy now, pay later use for future payouts. Number 6, the official rate of inflation just increased at the fastest pace that we have seen in 5 months. Consumer prices in June posted the biggest increase since the beginning of the year and likely to keep the Federal Reserve from cutting interest rates later this month. But there are only scattered signs of tariff-related inflation. The consumer price index rose 0.3% last month. The government said Tuesday, and it matched Wall Street's forecast. It was the biggest rise since January. Well, again, the issue with the rates, and that's another thing that I talked about today with Travis Knight over on the David Knight Show. That's the fight that we're having. The reason that Trump is angry with Jerome Powell or is dissatisfied or says that he's screwing it up, big screw ups, all this stuff, is because Powell won't lower rates. And to lower rates is to increase the money supply. It is to have all these massive holders of U.S. debt. I mean, when you raise interest rates, folks, what they do is that it freezes a lot of the money supply. These big holders of U.S. debt and treasuries will put it off long term to get, a 4 or 5% return on that. So they'll just freeze that currency. When rates are low, there's no incentive to hold it. It will be put back into the system, which creates inflation. And of course, the loss of purchasing power because the dollars are more ubiquitous. Number 7, a recent survey found that 23% of Americans have decided to delay retirement. This figure is up. Well, Ben Shapiro will be happy.
You should just say, well, you can retire at 65.
Older Americans are kicking the can down the road on retirement over concerns about the economy and their own financial readiness to step back from work. That's according to a new survey from F&G Annuities and Life, which polled 2,000 U.S. adults over 50 years old. The life insurance and annuities company found that 23% of those polled have already decided to delay their retirement as they grapple with the question about their financial readiness. This is all part of the departure that this country made in 1971, folks. You have to work harder and harder at finding investment vehicles, places to park your cash. And when you have housing bubbles, when you have a declining real estate market, or you have a declining stock market, you go into a free fall territory where you're not keeping up with inflation. And that's why in the 1970s, we went off the gold standard, but in the mid 1970s, you see the birth of things like the 401k and the IRA, and those come online because that was in anticipation of what was next. They have to get people in order to survive, in order to have any sort of hope for retirement. You got to get into all these funds and do this stuff outside of just being what your ancestors would have done, which is, buy a home, put some savings away, do things, and then you can, plan on that. You can't do that when you have nothing back in your currency. Number 8, according to another recent survey, nearly 70% of Americans are feeling anxiety and depression because of the state of their finances. Nearly 7 in 10, 69% say financial uncertainty has led to them feelings of anxiety and depression, according to a recent survey from Northwest Mutual, an 8 percentage point increase from 2023. And by the way, 2023 wasn't great. Now, we forget what happened to us in 2020, 2021. That's, because of the rapidity, the acceleration of the news cycle and the stream of history that we're on, we forget. But there was massive blows to the supply chain, to the currency, the stability, the job market, everything that was taken away from the lockdowns. And, the non-essentials that were in those businesses, those hundreds of thousands of businesses that were put out of business from those lockdowns. Number 9, the percentage of U.S. population is dealing with food insecurity has almost doubled over the past 4 years. In May, 15.6% of adults were food insecure, almost double the rate in 2021. Yes. How's that supply line destruction paying off? And again, it's a double rate since 2021. Yeah, I remember distinctly too the Biden administration coming out and saying, "See, we've got all these job openings. Look, there's millions of jobs that the Biden administration had created, and if you looked at the metrics, it was because they were forcing and bullying corporations to lay people off who wouldn't get an injection." That's why you laid people off. Of course, there's job openings. It's the same thing with the supply lines, and of course, people going to bed hungry. A lot of that. They say trickle down economics. Well, that's exactly what happened. It trickles down, and it's a trickle down depression as well. Number 10, freight related companies all over the country are conducting mass layoffs. Another wave of closures and layoffs has hit workers and companies tied to commercial transportation, manufacturing, lumber production, distribution, and logistics across the U.S. Over the past several weeks, there are 4,137 jobs cuts announced, according to media reports and worker adjustment at Retraining Notification. This is the place that monitors the layoffs. It says this would not be happening if the U.S. economy was in good shape. When the economy is strong, lots of stuff is being shipped all over the place. Sadly, a lot more layoffs are on the horizon. In addition to facing another major economic downturn, we have also entered the AI revolution. According to Robert Kiyosaki, AI is going to cause massive unemployment. Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki has a sobering take on one of today's hottest trends, and that's artificial intelligence. We're going to be talking about that here in a minute too. Biggest change in modern history, he declared on X on July 1st. AI will cause many smart students to lose their jobs. AI will cause massive unemployment. Many still have student loan debt. Kiyosaki isn't alone in sounding the alarm. Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, the AI company behind the large language model Claude, recently warned that AI would wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and push the unemployment rate to as high as 20%. Thanks to AI and other technological advancements, our society is now in a period of exponential transformation. Many would argue that many of the changes that we're witnessing are not for the better. It's going to be very challenging to make good decisions in this environment because many of the old rules no longer apply. Well, that's exactly the old rules. You play by the old rules. They're changing the rules right in the middle of the games. What I talked about yesterday on Tinfoil Hat, it's the way I ended the interview. It's so very important to understand the stream of history in which we are in. If you use the same models, if you look at the past, at least the last 70 years, if you look at that since this is the last, since the last end of the fourth turning, going in from 1944, 1945, if you look at that and you try to base the future off that, you will fail because those models no longer work. And those who can adapt and look at this, I think, with some cold, hard logic, you'll actually see that there's more opportunity than downside if you look at it through that lens. This is going to take some retooling and some new understandings of how things work. By the way, I'm not immune to any of this. I get up every day and I try to understand exactly the bedrock of reality. I want to. I don't. Aside from biases and my own wants or how I want, want to see things, the monetary system, the economic system, is being reset. That's why they call it a great reset. This is part of the push for, and this is the friction between history and what the elites actually want. And I say the elites, you can call them the lizard people, or you can call them the globalist goblins, whatever you want to call them. Okay, this is the people that would like to have top-down centralized control over everything. They want a certain outcome, and they want centralization. History, on the other hand, the good news for all of us, history is decentralizing. It's fragmenting. That goes across cultural lines. It's been doing this for a while now, for centuries, actually, since the Protestant Reformation, decentralizing the church. The same thing with the American Revolution, decentralizing away from the British Empire and imperialism in general. And, the sun never set on the British Empire. The Industrial Revolution and the technological revolutions have decentralized it. But the goal of the parasitic ruling class, if you look at the New World Order, you understand the Rockefeller, Rothschild model, the Trilateral Commission model is centralization. So they're fighting against the stream of history that actually is decentralizing. Technologies like Bitcoin, you can argue with me that it's a NSA plant or is created by intelligence, and maybe it was. If it was created to get people to accept a CBDC, then it's a failure. So but those things, in theory, Satoshi's white paper was about decentralization. It's about giving you the opportunity to bank on yourself, to have your own bit of wealth. You can do the same thing with physical gold and silver too. You don't even need a government for money. You don't need gold and silver or money. You don't need that. Decentralization is a mindset too. If you look at the ethno-nationalism, plays a big role in all of this too. Just get aside, go to the culture model, ladies and gents, and you'll see, the Hong Kongers and the Catalonians in Spain. It's happening all over the world. The Scottish. History is trending decentralized, and the ruling classes, that's the friction. That's what you're seeing. I think that's a good term for it. All right. I'll take a look at the chat. Oh, Harp says, good day. It's good to see you, Harps, on the chat. It says, Harp says, first, Ozzy, now Hulk Hogan is gone. Is that true? Hulk Hogan passed away. That is, I'll have to look that up. Are we seeing that? Let's see if we can get that in real time. Is that accurate? I haven't seen that. You have to send me a link if that's the case. Yeah, Hulk Hogan dead at 71. Wow. Well, that's unexpected. That was pretty swift. Sad. That's a sad day. He was what an icon. I'm going to get over to the chat over on Rumble as well. Thanks everybody for being here. It's great to know I got my support group when I'm on the road. And we are broadcasting live over Worldwide Christian Radio as well, shortwave going around the planet. Appreciate all you guys. Knights of the Storm. Do I get free lollipops in the new Wise Wolf drive-thru? You do, and you get dog treats, and I think we'll have to do something about pup cups and other things. Maybe we can sell some coffee out of there as well. It's good to see everybody over in the chat. Karen Carpenter says, I detest AI. It will also destroy the land, air, and water. Data centers are death to a local area. So many people sick near data centers already. Well, that's another weird aspect of all this. And I asked yesterday when I was on the Tinfoil Hat podcast, did they roll this out way early? I mean, they've had AI for a long time. And was this rolled out early just to disrupt some kind of timeline? Because it seemed like we had nothing, and then just there's this, this model of AI that's now ubiquitous in everything and getting smarter and smarter. But the argument used to hear the argument would be against Bitcoin because they said, look, it takes so much power, and they shut up about that. As soon as BlackRock launched the Bitcoin ETF, they shut up about the Bitcoin and how much power it drained or whatever it does drain. I mean, it creates new opportunities for people to use power. Like they've opened up old hydroelectric dams and other things. I mean, El Salvador's using a volcano and all. I mean, it's crazy stuff and geothermic things. And but they shut up about Bitcoin, and I think in large part because if you keep focusing on that, then you'll see how much energy, and Karen's right, how much energy AI is drawing out. Let's see. I see Birdhouse Blues. Birdhouse Blues always making some great pics of me and Beans. It says, feel the Arterburn. Appreciate that. On Birdhouse Blues. Okay. All right. I'm going to continue down our list of articles. The studio setup. Well, I'm at a very good friend's house out in California. This is the green room, and it's a great setup. I just kind of turned some things around. I got my camera on my laptop, and I got a little Rode microphone. So hopefully everything is 5x5, and we can complete this transmission. All right, let's jump into this article on AI while we're on the subject. And I still want to get to this last article that's up on Lou Rockwell, but I may not have time. And if we don't have time for that, then we'll jump over into some financial stuff. All right. Put this up real quick. Yeah, Karen will like this. This is over on Activist Post. My friend Charlie Robinson runs this website. If you can, go to Activist Post, sign up for the newsletter. Charlie's a magnificent human being, hard working guy, loves the truth, and great podcaster, great broadcaster. So go and check out Activist Post. And this is from, it's a reprint from Bruce Amberson, Real Clear Wire. Artificial intelligence breeds mindless inhumanity. I began studying AI in the mid-1980s. Usually for computer scientists of that era, my interest was entirely in information, not in machines. I became obsessed with understanding what it meant to live during the transition from the late industrial age to the early information age. What I learned is that computers fundamentally alter the economics of information. We now have inexpensive access to more information and higher quality information than ever before. In theory, that should help our individuals reach better decisions, organizations devise improved strategies, and governments craft superior policies. But that's just a theory. Does it? The answer is sometimes. Unfortunately, the sometimes not part of the equation is now poised to unleash devastating consequences. Consider the altered economics of information. Scarcity creates value. That's been true in all times, in all cultures, and for all resources. If there's not enough of a resource to meet demand, it increases value. If demand is met and a surplus remains, value plummets. Historically, information was scarce. Spies, lawyers, doctors, priests, scientists, scholars, accountants, teachers, and others spent years acquiring knowledge, then commanded a premium for their services. Today, information is overabundant. No one need know anything because the trusty phone that never leave our sides can answer any question that might come our way. Why waste your time learning, studying, or internalizing information when you can just look it up on demand? Having spent the last couple of years working in higher education reform and in conversations with college students, I've come to appreciate the power and the danger of this question. Today's students have weaker general backgrounds than we've seen for many generations because when information ceased being scarce, it lost all value. You know, it's funny. I'm stop right here because I remember the moment that I knew I wanted to be a different kind of thinker. And I walked out of a movie theater in 1997. I'd watched The Edge with Anthony Hopkins, Alec Baldwin. And the Anthony Hopkins character in that, he plays a billionaire. His name is Charles. And he just knows things. And the whole point of the movie is this: and he's stranded in the wilderness. He has to use his own wits and other things that he draws on his own knowledge to try to survive this encounter. And they're being stalked by a bear. It's very metaphorical too. It's philosophical, written by David Mamet. And I remember walking out of that theater and thinking, I want to be like that. I want to be able to have not just the guy who can look anything up, but the real wealth is somebody who, if you're constantly learning and you're constantly improving, then you can create a different kind of reality, not just for yourself, but for everybody, for those around you, for everything. Because especially when you're younger, you have this massive capacity for learning. It's just really hard to do. And my time in the military, being forced to be without a lot of the technology that you get away from, like, because books, you have to kind of break in the way your mind works in order to take on a large book or read a series of books, especially if it's history or philosophy or anything like that. You have to break your mind into it like you'd break in a boot. And then eventually you have all these frames of reference, and your language changes and the way that you see things change. But I remember that moment, and these younger people aren't going to have that. And not really, it's going to take, it'll be a superpower for somebody if they do. The new superpower will be paying attention, taking, time to study yourself. And I'm going to talk about that too during this article, because I'm having a different experience with AI. Maybe it's just me. It's important to recall how recently this phenomenon began. In 2011, an estimated 1/3 of Americans and 1/4 of American teenagers had smartphones. From there, adoption among the young grew faster than among the general population. Current estimates are that 90% of Americans and over 95% of teenagers have smartphone access. Even rules limiting classroom use cannot overcome the cultural shift. Few of today's college students or recent grads have ever operated without the ability to scout ahead or query a device for information on as needed basis. There's thus no reason for them to ever develop the discipline or the practices that form the basis for learning. The deeper problem, however, is that whilst instant lookup may work well for facts, it's deadly for comprehension and worse for moral thinking. Oh, that's so true. A quick lookup can list every battle of World War II, along with casualty statistics and outcome. It cannot reveal the strategic or ethical deliberations driving the belligerents as they entered the battle, nor can it explain why Churchill fought for the side of the good while Hitler fought for the side of the evil, a question that most of our most popular interviewers and podcasts have recently brought to prominence. At least, lookup couldn't provide such answers until recently. New AI systems still less than 3 years old, are rushing to fill the gap. They already offer explanations and projections, and at times include the motives underlying given decisions. They are beginning to push into moral judgments. Of course, like all search and pattern matching tools, these systems can only extrapolate from what they find. They thus tend to magnify whatever is popular. They're also prey for some of the most basic cognitive biases. They tend to overweigh the recent, the easily available, the widely repeated, and anything that confirms preconceived models. That's like groupthink. It's like hive mind. If it's accepted in the hive mind, see, AI still has this model right now where it is pulling from all the resources, but it hasn't quite yet made that leap to where it's making the decisions for you. And I think that's the issue. To me, it's like, why would libraries be dangerous? Why, more information making people dumber, it'd be worth less. That's an interesting argument. And it's certainly happening. If you go out into the average and just start talking to people, it is a noticeable difference. Like, go to the airport. It's a noticeable difference than 20 or 30 years ago. And I remember, having the type of conversations that you would have with someone. And you can find some great ones. You can find some good conversations, but there is something about the ability not to think. That's what Henry Ford said, thinking was the hardest job of all. That's why so few people do it. So the recent reports of Grok regurgitating crude anti-Semitic stereotypes and slogans illustrate the technological half of the problem. The shocking wave of terror-supporting actions racking college campuses and drawing recent grads in many of our cities illustrate the human half. The abundance of information has destroyed its value because information, facts, and data are the building blocks upon which all understanding must rest. We're raised a generation incapable of deep understanding because complex moral judgments build upon comprehension. Young Americans are also short on basic morality. We are rapidly entering a world in which widespread access to voluminous information is producing worse, not better decisions and actions at all levels. We have outsourced knowledge, comprehension, and judgment to sterile devices, easily biased to magnify popular opinion. We have bred a generation of exquisitely credentialed, deeply immoral, anti-intellectuals on the brink of entering leadership. Wow, that's a damning synopsis, but unfortunately true. And that's another thing is you look back in history, and one thing that always stands out to me, if you look at the intellectual capacity of the leaders, say prior, to World War I, these were brilliant people. And they allowed that to happen. Now you say allow, but what was planned? These are bankers' wars, and they fund both sides. Matter of fact, I brought up yesterday on Tinfoil Hat. I'm like, just for the record, anytime I get a chance to tell people that, in World War I, the head of the United States Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, was Paul Warburg, and in Germany, our mortal enemy, the head of the central bank was Max Warburg. They were brothers. Supposedly mortal enemies with the same family, funding both sides. When the ubiquity of instant lookup evolves beyond basic facts into moral judgments, banal slogans, and mindless cruelty will come to rule our lives. Is there any way out of this morass? Perhaps the only one that ancients discovered back when information, understanding, and morality all retained immense value. Faith, he says, faith in a higher power. Because the path we've set on, is our own, heading into some very dark places. Well, he's right about that. And so I think you've actually heard a term. I remember I brought it up when I was running for Congress. I gave my opening speech. One of the terms that I used was central banking of the Federal Reserve, mass immigration, wars for democracy. These were gods that failed. And, we've put so much emphasis on, what the future would look like and technology and all the rest, but it's not a god. And it could never actually supplant that. And in the technological mind, and you see a lot of the folks out there like the tech guy is Brian Johnson, who's got he's using the ambrosia technique where he's getting the blood from his son, and he's going to try to live forever. And these technocrats, and they want to link up to some hive mind, uplink consciousness and live forever and all that stuff. Come on, it's. And I think it's a focus on the material, or you get Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum. It says that man is a hackable animal. These are tools. And like I said, I've been using AI to converse with on matters of the global economy, finance, gold, silver, the history of things. And it's a huge resource. There's no reason why it would make me dumber. Now, if I have it run my business and I have it show up for me and I have it, somehow run my show or do where I'm not thinking, because right now this is unscripted. I got an article. I'm talking to you. I'm live. I'm talking to thousands of people around the world. This is great. It's a great privilege. If I don't show up sharp, if I go dull, then what's the point of listening to me? If I use AI, but to get information, like yesterday, I asked it, I was presuppose that the world economy is about 500 trillion in assets. And it came back and it said, yes, you're correct. It's about 500 trillion. It started to show me the metrics. And this is this is how much is in real estate. This is how much is in bonds. This is how much is in currency. And then it would give me do you want to see a model of how that looks? And do you want to see graphs? And yes. Right. And I want to see more of that. And then I go, so presuppose that you have a $500 trillion economy and 20 trillion of that is in gold. Does that make sense? Does it make sense that you have 500 trillion and then the money that's been money since the beginning of the dawn of time is only worth 20 trillion at current rates? And that the future money or the future digitized money is 1.8 trillion in a $500 trillion setting. Does that compute? And it started telling me no. It started coming back and telling me why that actually these things will increase. It's things I've been saying. Well, it's reinforcing it, but it's showing me graphs. So I'm just having these conversations with it. And I think it's interesting. Or you can ask it about a business model. It'll tell you why, I ask it about emailing, just email marketing. Just having a conversation. Do you think this is too much? Do you think this is about right? And it would send me back stuff and we go back and forth on it. So yeah, you're supposed to use it like you'd use a library. You're supposed to go look and learn more. But these people, again, this is what the author was saying on this piece on Over on Activist Post, was that people are getting dumber and they're phoning it in. I saw a meme the other day. It said, you need to take care of your health because somewhere out there that your future doctor is using GPT to pass medical school. Well, that's probably true. Nothing replaces imagination. I think, and I need to do this. I'm going to try to do this today. Was just sit for 30 minutes with a legal pad. It was Earl Nightingale. My grandfather turned me on to Earl Nightingale. You can go back and listen. He's had some timeless stuff. He was a Marine in World War II and had an iconic voice. And one of the things he said is every day, if you could just sit with a legal pad and without anything else, not a phone, not the magazine, not a magazine. Well, I'm dating myself. It's like, who has a magazine anymore? But not anything, like not a newspaper. not anything open, and you just go and sit for 30 minutes in the quiet, and ideas that come, and Brian Tracy talks about this too. It's a superpower that you will have. You can go back and use the technology. I don't have a problem with technology, but I think it's like a weapon. It's like anything else that can, like electricity, and somebody asked Thomas Edison, a lady asked him what electricity was, and he said, electricity is, madam, use it. It just is. So it's up to us, really, at some level. Ironically, it's the theme from Terminators. There is no fate but what we make. All right. Where do you guys want to go from here? We got about 10 minutes left in the transmission. And I see Twisted is in the chat. Good to see you guys. Yeah, go join us over on YouTube at Tony Arterburn. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe on X on America Unplugged. You've got the Rumble channel there, America Unplugged, and on X at Tony Arterburn. I'd appreciate that. Let's see. All right. Let's jump around here. I had 2 or 3 articles I still wanted to get to. It's going to be tough. All right, we'll see if we can do this one. You guys have to bear with me. I had to close it out a little bit earlier, but I want to put this one up because it's kind of a what next. And if I forget to plug, remember wolfpack.gold. Got some great deals going on over there. You talk about de-dollarization and everything that's happening in the world, folks. Deals on one-time purchases for any of the packages. And then we accept Bitcoin at no fees, no friction. I saw that term. That's something I've even just going back and forth with AI. It's like no friction between the purchase, so no fees. All right, this is Lou Rockwell. This is how we're going to close out. Jacob G. Hornberger, the Future of Freedom Foundation, says, get ready for a big foreign crisis. So with President Trump's MAGA supporters in full rebellion over his refusal to release all the records relating to the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia investigation, get ready for a big crisis in foreign affairs designed to distract attention from the Epstein scandal. It certainly wouldn't be the first time a ruler engaged in such a strategy. In fact, it's a time-honored way to get people to set aside their rebellion and instead rally around the flag. What did Samuel Johnson say? That patriotism was the last refuge of the scoundrel. It says, consider the immortal words of James Madison, the father of the Constitution. The means of defense against foreign danger have always been the instruments of tyranny at home. Among the Romans, it was the standing maxim to excite a war whenever a revolt was apprehended. Madison was saying that in the old Roman Empire, the populace would periodically go into rebellion mode, rebelling against things like exorbitant taxation or monetary debasement at the hands of their rulers. Whenever that would happen, the emperor would simply instigate a war against some scary foreign enemy, which would stir up both fear and patriotism within the populace. People would forget the rebellion in order to keep safe from the new official enemy with which they were now at war. Recall that at the end of the Cold War, most Americans were calling for a peace dividend. What they meant was that they were protesting the enormously high amount of money that was still being spent on the national security establishment. They were demanding a peace dividend that would entail a massive reduction in national security state spending, which would have meant an equally massive reduction in taxes. But notice what happened as soon as the 9/11 attacks took place. Most everyone put their peace dividend demands aside, and amidst a climate of fear and patriotism, called on the federal government to do whatever was necessary to keep them safe. The demands for a peace dividend disappeared permanently. The national security establishment has been flooded with taxpayer largesse ever since. Let's not forget about what brought about the 9/11 attacks. No, it wasn't hatred for America's freedom and values and U.S. U.S. officials maintain. It was instead what Madison said. Faced with demands for a peace dividend, U.S. officials had gone into the Middle East on a spree of death, destruction, and humiliation, which ultimately generated so much anger and hatred that it produced retaliation in form of the 9/11 attacks. What might U.S. officials do this time to distract people away from Jeffrey Epstein? The Ukraine-Russia war provides an excellent opportunity to do that. All that needs to be done is furnish Ukraine with long-range missiles that are used to attack Moscow, St. Petersburg, or other big Russian cities. In that case, Russia will be tempted to strike at NATO countries that are providing such missiles and obviously using Ukraine as a proxy to destroy Russia. What better way to create a diversion away from Jeffrey Epstein than producing a prospect of an all-out nuclear war between the United States and Russia? It says, of course, there's also China, especially given the mindset of hatred for China has been inculcated in the American people in the recent past. Ginning up a crisis with nuclear-armed China, say over Taiwan, would be another excellent way to cause people to stop thinking about Epstein. There is also, of course, nuclear-armed North Korea. As we learned in the first Trump administration, it's fairly easy to stir up a crisis with that communist regime. Even if North Korea might not be able to strike the U.S. with its nuclear missiles, it can certainly strike South Korea and Japan. Would that prospect be enough to get people's minds off Jeffrey Epstein? I think so. Needless to say, Iran is always available whenever a scary official enemy and a big foreign policy crisis is needed. All that needs to be done is to proclaim that Iran is still producing nuclear weapons and plans to use them against Israel and the United States. Voila, a big, scary official enemy, big enough in foreign crisis that would easily cause all those MAGA people to forget Jeffrey Epstein. One thing is certain. Given the fact that Epstein obviously had very wealthy and very powerful clients, and more important, given the very likelihood that Epstein had connections to either Israeli or U.S. intelligence or both, there is no reasonable possibility that Trump is going to order the release of all federal investigative files in the Epstein case. Will his MAGA supporters simply accept the inevitable and give up? If they don't, then everyone should prepare himself for the prospect of a big foreign crisis in the near future. I'm glad we got through that whole thing. I read that this morning, and I thought, what a way to, it's the Socratic method, ladies and gents. Just asking questions. Is that enough to get you to forget about Jeffrey Epstein? As Trump says, the man who never dies, it keeps coming back, and all this stuff recycles. It's a Russian doll. It has to be Russian. I don't know why. It's a Russian doll of a psyop within a psyop within a psyop. And something deeply with this thing is interesting to watch. But I appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget, again, wolfpack.gold. If you can, go stack there. We've got some great deals on 90% silver, Constitutional Wolf, those $250 a month, and I'll send that direct to your door. I think we do free shipping on Constitutional Wolf. We definitely got some great deals on American Eagles too right now. So wolfpack.gold, Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. Last week, I just try to make sure I do this every week too. We talked about Legal Shield. Guys, with everything going on, $30 a month, go to peoplesprotectionplan.com. Check out what Legal Shield can do. Unlimited access to the top law firms in the United States. You can call as many times as you want. You can open up a case, talk about any documents you want to talk about, get expert legal advice. They'll handle your traffic tickets. They'll get you a will, last will and testimony. All that stuff's built into the program. And you get audit protection. All of that, ID theft protection, it's all there. Less than a cup of coffee a day, peoplesprotectionplan.com. And it supports the show. I've been with them for 23 years. Love the product. But we will be back next week. America Unplugged on Saturday. Thanks for being here, guys. It means a lot to me. Follow the podcast. New Paratruther is out. Alan Herrera, great book on gold and its story with humanity. Go check that. That's up on Paratruther. All right. From Beans the Brave and myself, the crew, everybody, you guys take care of each other. End of transmission.